bienvenue pour la session qui constitue jeudi 10 février l'année 2026 avec moi, Lucia et puis Virgile Leonti pour session Sénat là qui tient jeudi aux ensemble. Session Sénat là toujours qu'à suivre session qui consiste même ça c'est même parlement ça nous a dit l'ennemi même parlement ça c'est mardi passé les tenir en session et puis c'est mon qui électé à qui consiste avec vous savez l'année ça nous a créé des chambres de niveaux et puis c'est même parlement même c'est mon qui électé avec deuxième là c'est sénateur là c'est mon qui choisit par façade gouvernement façade opposition et puis indépendant qui choisit par gouverneur général là avec tu m'as dit bienvenue pour Virgile Leonti ou parti là et puis nous dernier quoi Virgile mais bienvenue quand même.
Merci Michael and good day to all our viewers. It's nice to join you back here again Michael for the continuation of what you said, some of the business of the House, which was stated on Tuesday, and that the Senate will need to meet to
Let us pray.
Almighty God, by whom alone King reigns and Prince decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, with thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public will, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the unity and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Good morning, Senators. I would like to ask Madam Clerk to please administer the oath of allegiance to our new Senator, returning Senator.
I, Dominic Francis Fede, do swear, solemnly affirm, that I will faithful and bear the true allegiance to St. Lucia, that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of St. Lucia, and I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of St. Lucia.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good morning again, Senators. I have received correspondence from the Speaker of the House of Assembly advising that the following motions and bills were passed in the House of Assembly and forwarded to the Senate for its concurrence. Motions: Value-Added Tax Act resolution of the House of Assembly to approve the draft value-added tax alteration of rates of interest order. Value-Added Tax Act resolution of Parliament to approve the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order. Bills: Public Procurement Amendment Act, Income Tax Act Amendment, Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Act. I beg to announce that His Excellency, the Governor General, has been pleased to assent the following bills: Land and House Tax Amendment, Eastern Caribbean Citizenship by Investment Regulatory Authority Agreement Bill, Citizenship by Investment Amendment, Pensions Amendment, Community Tourism Development Amendment. I have received apologies from Senator Ferropolius informing of her unavailability to attend today's sitting, and we welcome back Senator Dominic Fady. I wish to advise that between the 14th and 19th January 2026, along with the Speaker of the House of Assembly and Clerk of Parliament, I attended the Conference of Speakers and Presiding Officers of the Commonwealth in New Delhi, India. Some of the topics: AI in legislatures, impact of social media in the parliamentary authority, and the health and security of members of parliament. I am pleased to inform that Senator Honorable Shanda Harak Singh and Senator Angelina Ferropolius, Doctor, represented the Parliament of St. Lucia at a Parliamericas workshop which took place in Port of Spain, Trinidad. I wish to thank Senators for your participation in our orientation session, which was held yesterday. Thanks to Deputy President Senator D. Lee for your presentation and the staff of the Parliament for facilitating the sessions. Special thanks as well to Speaker Honorable Claudius Francis for his very generous intervention and guidance. Thank you, Senators. I wish to welcome Mr. Kendall Henderson and his wife from the U.S., Arizona. They are visiting St. Lucia, and they were very interested in being part, see how the process goes on in the House, and so they are our special guests this morning. A special warm welcome to you. Statements from ministers. Appointment of sessional committees. Senators, yesterday during our orientation session, we discussed the various committees and where senators would serve. I think most senators have indicated where they would like to serve, which committee they would like to sit on, and I shall go through this to make sure we are all on the same page. Standing Order Committee, Madam President, as the chair, Senator the Honorable Minister Dr. Shandali Harak Singh, my apologies, I think it's Senator Ignatius Jean is on this committee. Senator Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot is on that committee. Senator Angelina Ferropolius is on that committee, as well as Deputy President Senator D. Lee. House Committee, chaired by President. On the committee, we have members Senator Alison Jean, Leader of Government Business, Senator Tommy Descartes, Senator Elisha Norbert, and Independent Senator Ember Charles will serve on the House Committee. Committee of Privileges, chaired by the President. On that committee will also be Senator Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot, Senator Mitonia de Turville, Senator Elisha Norbert, and Independent Senator Deputy President Senator Dil Lee. Regulations Committee, the members will be Senator Alison Jean, Leader of Government Business, Senator the Honorable Minister Dr. Chandali Harak Singh, Senator Ideshas Jean, Senator Mitonia de Taville, and Independent Senator Deputy President Senator Dil Lee. So, Senators on the Regulations Committee, when you meet, I think you will appoint your chair, as far as we know. So, this is where we are in terms of the appointment to the sessional committees. Thank you so much, Senators, for your cooperation on that matter. Papers to be laid. Honorable Leader of Government Business, I suggest you take a sip of water because you have a long run, Senator.
Madam President, I beg to move the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 145 of 2025, Insolvency Act Commencement Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 146 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Akim Dion Rowe Order. Statutory Instrument Number 147 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Nairi Don Alfonso Order. Statutory Instrument Number 148 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Roger Mark Kawal Singh Order. Statutory Instrument Number 149 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Suen Anika Thompson Order. Statutory Instrument Number 150 of 2025, Physical Planning and Development Environmental Protection Area, Peter Management Area Amendment Order. Statutory Instrument Number 151 of 2025, Customs Duties Amendment of Schedule 4, Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 152 of 2025, Customs Service Charge Amendment of Schedule Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 153 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 15 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 154 of 2025, External Trade Restricted Imports Amendment Order. Statutory Instrument Number 155 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedules 1 and 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 156 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 157 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 5 Order. I'm sorry, I may have skipped 157, Madam President. I'll go back to 157. Statutory Instrument Number 157 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 159 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Act Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 160 of 2025, Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, Amendment of Schedule 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 161 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 162 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 163 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 5 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 164 of 2025, Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 165 of 2025, Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, Amendment of Schedule 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 166 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Ashley Tamara Mayer Order. Statutory Instrument Number 167 of 2025, Price Control Amendment Number 15 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 168 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 16 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 169 of 2025, Income Tax Exemption Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 170 of 2025, Tourism Development Bay Gardens Limited, Bay Gardens Inn Order. Statutory Instrument Number 161 of 2025, 171, of 2025, Tourism Development Bay Gardens Limited, Bay Gardens Beach Resort and Spa Order. Statutory Instrument Number 172 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility, Simon Michel Mehu Order. Statutory Instrument Number 173 of 2025, St. Lucia Parliament Proclamation Dissolving Parliament. Statutory Instrument Number 174 of 2025, St. Lucia Parliament Proclamation Appointing Day for General Elections. Statutory Instrument Number 175 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 17 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 176 of 2025, Revised Edition of the Laws of St. Lucia, Rectification of Errors Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 177 of 2025, Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 178 of 2025, Customs Service Charge Amendment of Schedule Number 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 179 of 2025, Tourism Development Lake Incorporated Order. Statutory Instrument Number 180 of 2025, Income Tax Exemption Number 3 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 181 of 2025, St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority Seaport Tariff Amendment Regulations. Statutory Instrument Number 182 of 2025, Price Control Amendment Number 16 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 183 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 18 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 184 of 2025, Tourism Development 5 Doors Investment Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 185 of 2025, Tourism Development Hoku Homes Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 186 of 2025, Tourism Development Anatas Taxi and Tours Order. Statutory Instrument Number 187 of 2025, Tourism Development Andrew Taxi Services Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 188 of 2025, Tourism Development Authentic Transfers Order. Statutory Instrument Number 189 of 2025, Tourism Development B-Taxi SLU Order. Statutory Instrument Number 190 of 2025, Tourism Development The Chavaz Experience Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 191 of 2025, Tourism Development David's Taxi Service Order. Statutory Instrument Number 192 of 2025, Tourism Development Dasheville Holdings Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 193 of 2025, Tourism Development Elite Excursions and Transportation Services Order. Statutory Instrument Number 194 of 2025, Tourism Development Ferdinand International Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 195 of 2025, Tourism Development JTB Limited Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 196 of 2025, Tourism Development JTB Limited number 3 order. Statutory Instrument number 197 of 2025, Tourism Development Montet Cottages order. Statutory Instrument number 198 of 2025, Tourism Development Parasol Nature Adventures order. Statutory Instrument number 199 of 2025, Tourism Development Stewards Executive Transfers and Tours Limited order. Statutory Instrument number 200 of 2025, Tourism Development Things to Do 758 order. Statutory Instrument number 201 of 2025, Tourism Development VW Voyages SLU order. Statutory Instrument number 202 of 2025, Tourism Development Venture ATV order. Statutory Instrument number 203 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility Asif Adam Hussein Shah order. Statutory Instrument number 204 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility Kimika Usam Ashley Osborne order. Statutory Instrument number 205 of 2025, Tourism Incentives Kenneth Phillip order. Statutory Instrument number 206 of 2025, Tourism Incentives Networks Inc. order. Statutory Instrument number 207 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives DG Farm Incorporated order. Statutory Instrument number 208 of 2025, Tourism Development Amendment of Schedule 2 order. Statutory Instrument number 209 of 2025, Immigration Waiver of Fee for Extension of Permit number 2 order. Statutory Instrument number 210 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives Glass Motors Limited Amendment order. Statutory Instrument number 211 of 2025, St. Lucia Parliament Appointment of Session of Parliament. Statutory Instrument number 212 of 2025, Alien Landholding Licensing Exemption, Joel Stephan Wallace order. Statutory Instrument number 213 of 2025, Alien Landholding Licensing Exemption, Leland Andre Charles order. Statutory Instrument number 214 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives KM2 Solutions St. Lucia Limited order. Statutory Instrument number 215 of 2025, Price Control Amendment number 17 order. Statutory Instrument number 216 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 number 19 order. Statutory Instrument number 217 of 2025, Value Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 number 3 order. Statutory Instrument number 218 of 2025, Value Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 2 order. Statutory Instrument number 219 of 2025, Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 number 3 order. Statutory Instrument number 220 of 2025, Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 2 order. Statutory Instrument number 221 of 2025, Customs Duties Amendment of Schedule 4 number 3 order. Statutory Instrument number 222 of 2025, Customs Duties Amendment of Schedule 4 number 4 order. Statutory Instrument number 223 of 2025, Alien Landholding Licensing Exemption, Rishma Ramnares Joseph and Warren Jason Andrew Joseph order. Statutory Instrument number 224 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives Caribbean Metals Limited order. Statutory Instrument number 225 of 2025, Income Tax Exemption number 4 order. Statutory Instrument number 1 of 2026, Price Control Amendment number 1 order. Statutory Instrument Number 2 of 2026, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 1 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 3 of 2026, Income Tax Amount of Remission of Tax Regulations. Statutory Instrument Number 4 of 2026, Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rules. Statutory Instrument Number 5 of 2026, Price Control Amendment Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 6 of 2026, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 7 of 2026, Fiscal Incentives Bryce and Company Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 8 of 2026, Tourism Development Simon E. Imports Taxi and Touring Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 9 of 2026, Fiscal Incentives Plastic Solution Limited Order. The Parliamentary Commissioner Annual Report 2020 to 2024. St. Lucia Bureau of Standards Annual Report 2021 to 2022. St. Lucia Bureau of Standards Annual Report 2022 to 2023. Invest St. Lucia Annual Report 2024 to 2025.
You ready? Motions. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided under Section 46(4) of the Value Added Tax Act, Chapter 15.42, the Act, that any person who fails to pay tax, being the whole or part of the remainder of any tax due or payable under the Act by the due date, is liable to a penalty equal to 10% of the amount of tax due. And whereas it is provided under Section 46(4)(a) of the Act that the Minister responsible for Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, alter the rate of penalty under the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 46(4)(a) of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 46(4)(a) of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to alter from the 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026, the rate of penalty from 10% to 0% on the whole or part of the remainder of tax due or payable under the Act for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Sorry, Madam President. Be it resolved that Parliament by affirmative resolution approves the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order, which alters from the 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026 the rate of penalty from 10% to 0% on the whole or part of the remainder of tax due or payable under the Act for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Madam President, I just want to give some explanation to this resolution of Parliament. Madam President, in a previous sitting, Parliament amended the VAT Act to allow for the alteration of the rate, which effectively waived the penalties for VAT payment. As we know, Madam President, businesses are expected to collect and to remit VAT to the Inland Revenue Department. Any arrears of that VAT attracts penalties and interest. And so this resolution seeks to alter the rate because that time expired from May of 2024. Madam President, the Inland Revenue Department has reported that there have been noticeable attempts by business people to engage in discussion on a way forward to remit the arrears of VAT. As a result, the government is extending the period of the rate of alteration on these penalties for VAT from May 2nd, 2024 to May 1st, 2026. Madam President, it is strongly believed that the waiver of the VAT penalties will provide an opportunity for taxpayers in arrears to update and simultaneously make the arrears more manageable for the Inland Revenue Department. So we ought to see a higher rate of collection. This current amendment before us, combined with the inclusion of VAT interest, will allow for merchants and businesses to utilize this forgiveness of these funds to realign and improve their balance sheets, thereby improving their financial position. Because penalties and interest are liabilities on the balance sheet of these businesses. So by excising these penalties and interests, we ought to see an improvement in the financial position of these businesses. Madam President, this is not to encourage bad behavior of businesses, because if there is the collection of VAT, there ought to be the remittance of VAT immediately after it's due. However, given the situation with some of the businesses, especially the small to medium-sized businesses, it's sometimes a little onerous in having to do all of the financials to be able to submit these taxes. So, Madam President, I present this motion to the Senate for approval of the value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order and look forward to your support. Thank you.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order, which alters from the 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026, the rate of penalty from 10% to 0% on the whole or part of the remainder of tax due or payable under the Act for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Senator Norbert.
Madam President, I rise today as an opposition senator in support of this motion, the intent of the motion, However, it raises serious questions about the conditions under which our people, once again, have been asked to comply. You see, the bill, from my understanding, is like a tax. The motion is a tax amnesty, an extension of the grace period. And we have to be frank about why amnesties are needed and what it really is. Recently, we spoke of a gun amnesty. And a gun amnesty is not a celebration of lawlessness. It's not that we want to see how many guns we have and the size of guns we have collected from our streets. The gun amnesty, or any amnesty, is an acknowledgement that something in the system has failed. Something has failed so badly that people no longer feel safe or they don't feel encouraged to comply. The goal of the gun amnesty was simple: to get guns off the street. The goal of this tax amnesty is simple: to get the money that rightfully belongs to the government off the streets. You see, when people refuse to pay taxes, Madam President, it is not always out of rebellion. And as the Senator alluded to, very often maybe they don't have the procedural know-how. The small businesses may be struggling with the VAT, the procedures for submitting their VAT. But very often as well, it may be because of self-preservation. I wonder how many of these businesses need the revenue that they collected, the VAT that they collected, or they've probably reinvested that money into their businesses. Maybe if their balance sheets have to honor these liabilities, they may be in the red. People are holding on to their money in this country, many times because paying VAT, paying the taxes, expecting the promises of delivery to return, and they are being disappointed. Refunds, for example, promised since 2021 have not materialized. Filings made in good faith with no response. Some of them have stopped filing altogether. Some public servants. If there is an erosion in the trust of the collection system, then people will lose faith. It takes me back to thinking about guns and the encouragement to have an amnesty to bring the guns into our police stations. Just like the VAT that we have collected, both of them are illegal. Holding on to VAT that should have been given to the government is illegal. The punishment was a fee of 10%, yet they did not abide. I know we're not encouraging bad behavior, but if you were being charged 10% and you don't abide, we'll tell you, okay, we won't charge you 10%. Behave yourself, we're removing the punishment. When persons lose faith in our police force, our justice system, you know, they stop calling the police, they start calling hitmen. Now I know that giving them the grace period is encouraging them to pay the VAT. Similarly, like in all other things in our country, when we give to the government, when we call the police, we expect results. When we give to the government the VAT, we expect to see what the VAT, the dollar is, the tax dollar is doing. Lucky Dube said that he pays the tax, but he does not know what he's paying for. And I think if St. Lucians, if our businesses see there's greater accountability and they can see what we are doing with the tax that they collect, they have greater faith in the system, they will comply. If businesses, say in Miku North, collect VAT, they realize that a speed bump that they've been asking for, maybe to make their customers feel safe crossing the highway, coming to support their business, is not being given, then they'll be discouraged to contribute. The roads to their businesses in a deplorable condition that they've been asked to pay up, they'll be discouraged to make these payments. Maybe businesses who prefer investing in sports, they get hundreds of donation letters every year. Maybe they choose to keep the taxes and they decide how it's spent in their communities. Maybe they're approached by the St. Lucia Athletics Association who needs money that's not coming from enough money coming from the government. We have to think, why would typically law-abiding citizens...
Senator, I just want to caution you when you call out the name of an organization that is not seated here or represented here, you're putting that organization right there on the spot. Okay. You're mentioning, so be very careful. I don't think you should be calling out names of organization, except if you have evidence or a letter indicating that they were not receiving funds from the government or from a ministry. But barring that, I think you should be very careful, ought not to do that.
Right. So, I'll proceed without mentioning names, but I would wish that all our businesses who are collecting VAT, they willingly pay up the taxes that are due to the government. In closing, Madam President, I want to say that the bill may encourage people to come forward, but it will not restore trust on its own. Trust is restored when the state delivers what it promises, when systems are fair, when development is visible, when people feel invested in and not extracted from. I hope the nation is hearing the debate. I also sincerely hope that the live broadcast may one day include sign language interpretation, because guess what? The hearing impaired also pay tax, and those who own businesses pay VAT. I sincerely hope that we can understand the importance of such measures, because transparency must be accessible to all. St. Lucians are now not willing to contribute. They are now not even willing to pay what they collect that belongs to the government. If we fix the service provided to them, if we fix their trust in us, they will pay, and they will do so proudly. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I wish to thank...
Apologies, Senator. I think Senator Fede had his light on, but I couldn't see it because the podium was in the way. Apologies, Senator. Please proceed for your contribution.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to make a few comments on this motion presented here by the government side to the House this morning. Madam President, the implementation of VAT, I have often contended, have been fraught with issues.
Senator, could you move a little closer to the microphone? I think the staff has, and this notice will be for all senators. When you do stand to speak, go close to the mic so we can pick up the sound, because it's becoming very difficult for our recorders to decipher what is being said and to record. So please do that. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. So, Madam President, I have often contended that the implementation of VAT by the St. Lucia Labour Party has been fraught with issues. The St. Lucia Labour Party government.
Yes.
So, Madam President, first we had a Labour Party in opposition saying that VAT was oppressive to the poor. And then we had a Labour Party administration upon winning the 2011 general elections. Mere months after that, in 2012, implemented VAT at a rate of 15%. Madam President, we felt that that rate was indeed onerous to the people of St. Lucia, onerous to businesses, onerous to consumers. It had a knock-on effect on inflation, the cost of living, and the general way of life in St. Lucia. In 2016, Madam President, in that election campaign, the United Workers' Party campaigned on the eventual, and you know, Madam President, regardless of how we have repeated it, they've always tried to twist our words to say that we promise that we will completely eliminate VAT. But Madam President, history will show that we've always had an issue with the 15% rate. But the results are there to show, Madam President, that the rate of 15% did cause the demise of many small businesses. It did cause many St. Lucians to lose their jobs. And it did cause, Madam President, a spike in supermarket prices. The evidence is clear. Everyone remembers that, and the country is replete with evidence of that history. It's there. We cannot remove it. So, Madam President, when the United Workers' Party administration, of which I was part of, the government, decided that we were going to reduce the VAT rate from 15 to 12.5%, the Labour Party opposition then led a charge to suggest that we were doing something that was bad, that we were committing this cardinal sin that would have affected the revenues of the country, and that we were going to lose $52 million. Madam President, the evidence in the economic and social review that followed showed that it wasn't a straight math equation, but the economics of it suggested that we lost, Madam President, a mere $18 million because there were increased transactions because of the reduction in the rate of VAT. And that, Madam President, had a knock-on effect on consumer confidence, consumer spending power, and we saw people spending money. Madam President, I come here today and I see that the government is clearly having problems in picking up the monies from businesses. While the leader of government business has indicated that, and I want to quote her properly, I wrote it down verbatim, she said that the IRD has indicated that there are noticeable attempts by businesses to pay. The Prime Minister in the lower house, who's also the Minister of Finance, he had a number. He said $30 million was the number that they had picked up. Madam President, I was in this house, and the outstanding amounts which the leader of government business has not quoted today, and I asked her to get that number if she doesn't have it in her possession, because I'm looking forward in her rebuttal for her to tell the people of St. Lucia how many hundreds of millions are outstanding in uncollected VAT by these businesses that we are now coming to the House and say, let's just go a little easy on them. Let's just reduce the rate from 10%, the rate of penalty, from 10% to 0%. I want to know, the public deserves to know, how many hundreds of millions we're talking about. And then secondly, Madam President, why is it doing so poorly? Why only $30 million have been picked up? Is it that businesses, Madam President, have found the rate of VAT generally too onerous to deal with? Is it that the economic environment is so bad that the businesses can't afford to pay and they prefer to use that money to save their businesses? I'm not saying any of this is legal, but the question deserves to be asked. Because, Madam President, what we have here is a complete crisis in our revenue situation in this country. So, Madam President, I come here with very mixed feelings as I speak about this bill. Because, Madam President, it was the same Labour Party government that implemented VAT on funeral services. Same Labour Party government. They're coming here now to save the businesses today, but they had VAT on funeral services. Imagine, Madam President, that you were grieving for your loved one. You were there crying over a casket, grieving over the loss of a loved one, and then the government is fighting you for a 15% VAT rate. You had to pay to place your loved one into the grave, to say goodbye to them. The same Labour Party administration, Madam President, who was often said that they are the champions of the poor, had VAT on the reconnection of water and electricity services. Same Labour Party government. Madam President, the same Labour Party administration had VAT on the printing of education services. It required, Madam President, the compassion of the United Workers' Party administration of 2016 to 2021 to then remove VAT on all of these services on the people of St. Lucia, so that we can finally have a tax regime that is progressive, Madam President. And so therefore, Madam President, there was a philosophy behind the whole issue of reducing the VAT rate, because we understood clearly that these same businesses that the Labour Party administration would like to save today, that they were having problems with VAT. A major issue which still confronts many businesses, Madam President, is that of the fact that they pay VAT not on the delivery of a service or on monies received, but they are required to pay VAT on invoices of which they have not been paid. So, Madam President, if, for example, I render a service to you, my business is VATable, and I send you an invoice for that month, I am required to pay the VAT. It affects the cash flow of many businesses. Some of them making under $500,000. The legislation says that once you're making over $400,000, then you're required to pay VAT. So what if you're making $420,000? It then raises the whole question of the competitiveness of many businesses. As a consumer, do I prefer to go and pay a 12.5% more? Well, they've added the health and security levy on services and goods, commodities, to the VAT rate, to businesses that are VATable. So in effect, Madam President, that company rendering that service will mark up the various services that they render 15% more than someone who's making $20,000 less at a revenue of $400,000. So then it begs the question, all those medium-sized companies that are in that range between 400,000 and 500,000, what does the structure of VAT and how it is implemented, what does that do to their sales and their revenue performance? What does that do to their bottom line? So it begs the question, Madam President, can we persist with the structure that we have at this present time? Or is this another piecemeal approach by the government just to score some short-term public relation points like they normally do? Or are they really committed to long-term comprehensive solutions to help those businesses and to help avoid what we're facing today? Because we're not just trying to save those businesses or improve their bottom line. What we're trying to do as well, we would ultimately like to improve our revenue collections, have more monies for public services. If we have a situation in the country that our businesses can't afford to pay their VAT, that they legally have collected on behalf of the country, then we have a problem. Now, Madam President, unlike businesses, the man on the street, the common man, doesn't have a choice. Once he buys something, he's automatically taxed. And so, I'm sure that many St. Lucians don't know that there are two standards. That the government is today saying to businesses, we're going to help you, we're going to reduce the rate from 10%. Penalties, we're going to reduce those penalties. But you know what? Just make sure that those individuals that are coming to your different outlets, that those individuals, make sure they pay the 12.5% of VAT plus the 2.5% health and security level where applicable. It begs the question, Madam President, what does this do to the compliance of the tax? Does this improve businesses complying with their requirement to remit the tax to the government? Or does this create a bigger problem? These are the questions that have emerged, Madam President, in this particular motion that the government is proposing here today, which I have great difficulty in supporting. Madam President, it wasn't so long ago that the Senate recently passed a motion to waive interest and penalties to businesses, Madam President, in the House. And since then, like my colleague said, this amnesty is here because the previous amnesty has failed. Simple. It has failed. So instead of going back to the drawing board and trying something new, the government comes with the same old strategy which has failed them over the past 1.5 to 2 years. And that's what's happening. And this is why we're back here today. Because the strategy is not working, it's not performing. Out of the hundreds of millions, how much have you collected? 30 million. That is a fraction of how much of what is outstanding. So, you know, Madam President, if the St. Lucia Labour Party, if I had hired them as a debt collector, I would fire them, Madam President, because they're doing a pretty bad job at collecting the monies owed. Madam President, if the businesses can't pay the VAT, it's not their VAT. It is monies they're collecting on behalf of the country that they ought to remit. It then begs the question, how does it get to millions? I don't have a number now because the leader of government business didn't give me a number. But what my memory jerks back to, that it was somewhere in the vicinity of 500 million when we debated the previous amnesty. It is for her to say, it is not that, but it is this much, right? So if it is that we've allowed the penalties and interest to get that far, what has been happening all along? What does that say about our collection mechanisms that we have in place? How did it add up? How did this pile of uncollected VAT rise so high? This is the salient question that we need to ask. The efficiency of the collection methodology, questions are raised. It begs the question about that efficiency. So, Madam President, we ought to rethink this approach. We ought to make sure that we come with something new and don't apply old solutions, Madam President, to perennial problems. Madam President, I thank you very much for your indulgence, and I commit these comments to the House. Thank you.
Senator Ignatius Jean.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I stand to support the amendment to the bill as presented by the Leader of Government Business. Yes, my apologies. Yeah, I didn't want to be shouting too much at this early morning. But Madam President, as I listen to my friend across the floor, Senator Fede, reminds me of sometime in the mid-1900s when we used to play vinyl records, and you put on the turntable and the record gets stuck, so you're into the middle of the dance and it just keeps repeating. And that's what I was hearing from the other side, from Mr. Senator Fede. Because that is, but to stand to say that VAT has not worked and it is not a good tax, and they were sought to give 5 to stay alive and 5 to die dead and so on. And I think hence the reason he is where he is. And I think the people of St. Lucia had the confidence in the government of the Honorable Philip J. Pierre and the Labour Party. And perhaps my watch is showing 16-1 this morning. But Madam President, the point is, the government of St. Lucia has, and many governments do that, and the tax amnesty simply is to try to, it's a tool, it's a mechanism of trying to encourage tax compliance. I mean, no one likes to pay taxes. No one. You go back to the biblical times and how they treated the tax collectors. In the biblical times, perhaps those were the most hated people anywhere. So people always try to find ways to either avoid or evade taxes. But the point is, we need to continue delivering to the people of St. Lucia. And the government is simply trying to encourage those who have not been in compliance. And also, if you give a waiver on the penalties, it means that some people, many people, as indicated by the Leader of Government Business, will come in and say, all right, we're going to pay what we owe now, and at least you will collect that bit without the interest added on. So this is to try to encourage people to do that. And you get some, I mean, some of the issues raised by Senator Fede about the high cost of doing business because of the VAT. How do you think the government of St. Lucia has been able to make so many people full-time in the public service, to pay for the school books and facilities fees, pensioners, repair the roads, major infrastructural projects, laptops for children,
CXC,
and the list goes on and on and on. Where do you think, where does the government collect revenue to do all of that? That is the question. You have to find the source of revenue. And it must come from somewhere. Government does not run on thin air. There must be revenue collection. We do not export gold, diamonds, oil, as in Guyana. We have none of those resources that we can generate revenue from. What we have is that we have we are highly services-oriented country ever since the demise of the banana industry through international trade challenges. So it is a services-based industry, and you must find ways that you're going to collect the revenue as people do business. And we all must pay. We want improved hospital care services. We want to have improved services generally. Somebody has to pay for it. Senator Fede may recall sometime that when once $24 million was given back, it is money collected on behalf of the state that was waived for a particular business interest. Yeah, it was a waiver because it was money, $24 million of government money that was collected, and they found all sorts of ways not to pay it back to the government. And your government, the UWP administration at the time, decided to write it off. What we are doing now, we are saying that there are some interests that are due to the government of St. Lucia, and you have to render to Caesar what is due to Caesar. So we are saying do not come with the interests. We'll give you a break on this and bring the money in. And the government has collected, as you indicated, over $30 million by doing so. Otherwise, you would not have collected anything. So at least you have some of it coming. We're not condoning that people don't comply, but this is a way to find compliance. But to suggest that this is not a good tax and that you will not support it, I find it passing strange that you, as someone who has been around the business sector, yes, you did say it. All my colleagues heard you. You said you have great difficulty supporting the amnesty. You said so, sir. Well, okay, you didn't say it's not a good tax, but you said the VAT is not a good tax. You made reference, well, you didn't say in those words.
Madam President, I raise a point of order.
Senator Jean, you would speak to the chair rather than across to the Senator Fede. Yes? So you're rising on a point of order. Senator Fede, what is your point of order?
So, Madam President, the member is, Senator Jean, is misleading the House. I never said that VAT was not a good tax. What I said, the implementation of VAT is fraught with issues.
I think he corrected himself when you spoke across.
No, he kept saying, I say it's not a good tax.
He acknowledged, Senator Fede. I heard him acknowledge and he repeated what you said.
Okay.
So there's no debate here. He acknowledged. Please proceed, Senator Jean.
My apologies, my goodly Senator, that if you think I misinterpreted what you said or I misquoted you, so I withdraw that. But the point is that we need to collect the revenue, and I think it is passing strange that you would say you had great difficulty in supporting an amnesty so as to encourage people to pay up what is due to the state, what is due to the public of St. Lucia, so that we can continue to provide the services. Then we had Senator Elijah Norbert was using the analogies of the gun amnesty and when people refuse to pay taxes and the erosion of trust. I don't know it is an erosion of trust in the system, because we can see, we can see, and I have given you a few, just a few, and I can go on and on for the entire morning to say some of the many benefits the public have derived by the government giving back to the people of St. Lucia with the meager resources, even albeit whatever is collected. You can see it in every facet of society have benefited because the government puts people first. This government does that. We can account, and there's great accountability and transparency like never before. So I don't know where you're going to go with this about the analogy to the gun amnesty. But the tax dollar is doing as much in the country And you could see all over the place through the policies of the government, even now through this debate, we're saying you would owe us interest on revenues yet to be collected from you. Bring it in to us and we waiver. So that's a way of government giving back to the businesses to help them to put their houses in order. So, Madam President, I don't know that we should be having such a lengthy debate, so I think I will rest at this stage. Thank you very much.
Senator Descott.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I didn't intend to speak on this motion, but I would like to support my colleagues. Madam President, this government has raised the most taxes in the history of St. Lucia. And it's there. You go on the ECCB website, you go on the IMF website. So for me, when I heard the Prime Minister, almost in a sense of desperation, saying that businesses are not paying their or remitting the VAT, I was a bit confused. Because it's very clear, and we've said it over and over again, that this economy, particularly during the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, was being overtaxed.
Senator, you're talking to who? You said it over and over. Who are you referring to?
My apologies, Madam President. But I remember in the last sitting, I did reference that there was this economy is being overtaxed, Madam President.
No.
Yes.
I asked you specifically. You made a statement
Yes.
that you said. So I want to know, who are you referring to?
Well, I was speaking to this chamber, to you, last time I was here, Madam President.
Well, who said?
I said that the economy was being overtaxed. All right, Madam President? But, you see, there are several indicators, Madam President, to determine the health of an economy. Most times, for some of us who engage in economic analysis, we will look at utility consumption, how much electricity is used by the various sectors. It's what we call lead indicators. But another very, very important indicator is tax collections. Now, I find it very, very difficult to understand if an economy is doing so well. I mean, the rates of growth that we were talking about, 20%, 8.7%, and the IMF has said that this economy in 2025 has flatlined at 1.5%. And I went on the ECCB website just yesterday evening, and the ECCB has St. Lucia's economy contracting at 0.53%. You could go and see it for yourself. The ECCB website has St. Lucia's economy contracted. So I know something was fundamentally wrong with this economy.
You mean the experts are contracting?
The tourism numbers, and we know businesses are struggling in this country, you know. Tourism is down 3.2% in 2025. And every single sector or subsector of the tourism is down. Stevedores is down by 3.9%. Cruise is down by 14.4%. Yachting is down by 6.8%. Excursions, all of it. Well, the source is on the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank website. So, and I heard my colleague, Senator, suggest that they were given all of these goodies. What we saw in the last few months, Senator Shah, was a government that threw caution to the wind. Now, we all know in a political business cycle, at the end of a political business cycle, governments tend to throw caution to the wind. But we saw a government who made people permanent, and they knew all along that this is going to result in an increase in the wage bill. We saw a government increase a health and security levy 2.5%, and we said that is a cascading effect on small businesses, a cascading effect. We told the government, and even the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber said that their members were feeling the pinch. So this is an indication that this economy is not doing well as they try to purport. And I hasten to say, Madam Senator, Madam President, that St. Lucians should brace themselves for more taxes down the road. From all indications, and we've said it, we've told the government, you could lower the service charge at the ports to put an ease on businesses. This is confirmation that the medium, small enterprises, the engine of the growth of this country, have been feeling the pinch. So, Madam President, I understand the trade-off that they would have to make, because they had the option of saying, do I remit the VAT to the government, or do I let go and retrench staff? And in that context, I would say this was perhaps the most humane thing that they did by keeping people employed rather than remitting the taxes and sending people home, Madam President. So, Madam President, in closing, I want St. Lucians to know that this is a clear indicator that this economy is not doing well. The ECCB has indicated that it will contract by 0.5%. The IMF has said it will. The IMF has said it is going to flatline at 1.5%. You could go. The IMF has said, and so I would like to put St. Lucians on notice that taxes are coming down the road. Taxes are coming down the road, Madam President. And that is what we have to deal with. And I mean, to reconcile this, fuel prices continue to remain high. We've clamored, we've said to them that you need to lower. I mean, I read the Economic and Social Review. Even Lucia lowered its rates because in line with international prices. In the Economic and Social Review, Lucia adjusted it. At least Lucia has a pass-through mechanism that reflects changes in international prices. And on Monday, there was a consultation by the NUC.
Senator,
Water rates will be.
Senator, Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order.
Yes.
If the member on the other side is presenting
is a point of order or elucidation?
Not elucidation, it's a point of order that if he is referencing the Social and Economic Review, he would need to present his exact page and source. We are all privy to the Social and Economic Review, Madam President. So I'd like him to present his actual reference.
Madam President, I don't have the actual source, but I pride myself when I come in this honorable house that I don't just quote figures willy-nilly. I do my homework, and I will ensure that I get the page. I could go in my computer and I will share with you, Madam President, through you, with the honor of the Leader of Government Business. But the reality is, fuel prices have remained artificially high in this economy. Well, all other countries have resorted to giving relief to its people, giving relief to the business sector. This government has insisted that it will keep fuel prices, and we know now. I was reading the National Energy Policy, and she'll ask me, I think she'll ask me to quote what page in the National Energy Policy, but it's widely known that hydrocarbons, the energy that we use in this economy, 92% of it depends on hydrocarbons. And so the importance of just lowering the cost at the pumps would have done so much for the business sector, so much for households in this country. So this government now is faced with the reality that it has thrown caution to the wind in its bid to be successful at the polls. But we've warned St. Lucians that taxes will be coming down the road, and we see it. This is simply wetting the ground, preparing St. Lucia for when this government will come here and make a very, very strong claim, and I say, Madam President, to reintroduce VAT back at 15%. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam.
Senator Dr. Albert Poyat.
Madam President, I had decided that I would not even contribute to such a motion, which is very straightforward. However, I rise in support of the motion as presented by the leader of government business. And I say so, Madam President, in the spirit of one where we had a government that inherited an economy that was in shambles after COVID-19. And many business places came in and asked for relief. And the government was very sympathetic to the situations that these businesses faced and pardoned, give a lot of concessions so that these businesses will get an opportunity to recover. And so we have seen the economy bouncing back. And when I hear members on the other side speak to, they do not see where the taxes go. There is a lack of trust, and that is why people are not paying taxes. Madam President, we can remind them very quickly of some of them because the Prime Minister and his government published a Bible of successes, the progress that this government has made, and there was not enough paper to cover what the level of success. And it's an indication that the money that the government collects as VAT goes to repair and construct roads in St. Lucia. And I don't know if those on the other side went to Soufrière in recent times. And I was amazed when I drove to Choiseul, and about 90% of that road was like carpet. It's there. It's a fact. I don't have to bring it in the house. You have to go there to see it yourself and ride on it. Madam President, we saw the level of support that was given to persons in the housing repair and the conditions in which some St. Lucians live. That's where the taxes go. We look at health, an upgrade of primary facilities, the health centers. And I know for a fact that in Babono, we have 2 health centers that are almost new. And there are a number of other health centers throughout the island that have been upgraded. We have education. and Senator Jean outlined a number of initiatives that the government has taken. And the future of any country is based on education. And any government that invests in education is investing in the future, investing in the youth. We have the issue of national security. And the police officers will tell you what has happened in the area. Because when this government inherited what we inherited, there was a 0% allocation in the budget for training for police officers. We had hundreds of police officers that were on the streets and they had not received any training. They were just dressed in uniform. And this government went out and put money in the budget to train our officers, recruit our officers, give them the equipment, vehicles, security and protective vests and everything else that we could do from the government side. That's where the tax money goes. Then we have the issue of making persons permanent. Madam President, when I hear this thing, it pains me. Because some of us do not understand what was happening in the lives of these people. And for the government employees who are made permanent, it is not at an additional expense to government. It was job security. They are not paying additional money to them. They had a job, but they did not have job security. But where government had to get a little more than $1 million to pay was for the caregivers. These are people who they earn about $1,400 a month. And 90% of these people are women. And these people did not have job security, Madam President. And the government had to find the extra $1.something million to help these people get job security, and they were made permanent. We have, in the caregivers program, Madam President, I'm leading you to where all the money is going. And that's why government must collect that money from the businesses, small as it is, big as it is, medium size, whatever size we will collect, because government needs that money to help the people. And we had caregivers, and they care for the elderly Monday to Friday. And there are some people who did not have anybody to take care of them on the weekend. And the government agreed to provide support, and that is coming for persons who had nobody, because when they would have left these people there on Friday, when they come on Monday, they find them in the same condition, the same pampers on them, whatever, in the mess, they have not been fed. That's a government that has a compassion and concern, and that's where the VAT money will go. Madam President, the government has delivered a number of budgets, and most of them, or all of them, came tax-free. And people are shouting, there will be tax, there will be tax. Tax-free. But government still was able to provide the support that they needed as best as they could. And that is why the people of St. Lucia stopped the clock at 16 to 1. And they said they'll have to wait in the next 5 years before they change the time. 16 to 1. Every time I look at my watch, I see 16 to 1. It's not moving. I don't know what the problem is. Madam President, when we hear what is coming out from the Honorable Prime Minister, he speaks of an economy that has grown. I heard, unquoted, because the source is not here, unquoted, ECCB and IMF and so on, it's not brought here, but it is said, and how tourism has gone down. And we ask, how far down? Because you have to understand the depth of the well, and where the last government had to go down in that well to bring water up. That's what was done. And the people in St. Lucia said, well done, continue the good work that you have started. That's the mandate. And Madam President, in this country, the VAT that the people have collected on behalf of the government is not one where you say there is a problem with collection of VAT, because they have collected the money. So what we have to do from our end is continue to use different strategies until we collect every single cent. And the government is actually very lenient in trying to reach out to the business places who have collected the VAT on behalf of the government, and I'm making an appeal to these business places. It's not VAT you are going to collect. It's not VAT we are asking people to pay extra. It's the VAT that has already been collected. Now, I know people who are in business are very smart, and they say, if I hold back the VAT, I will reinvest it into something to make a little extra money. Government is foregoing the interest, the penalty on the VAT. This is a government that is caring, concerned about the thriving of small business, especially the small businesses.
Exactly.
So what we are saying here, Madam President, is that this is a step in the right direction, and what the government will continue to do is to expand, explore, and if the opposition themselves, who are there for almost 6 years, I want to know what the collection of VAT was like. They never gave a report. They never gave the total. But today they're asking, what's the total? They want the figures. Give your figures first, and then we put ours. At the end of the day, I support this motion on the floor, and we will continue. The government will be encouraged to continue along that path to ensure that we collect the VAT to take care of the business of St. Lucia. I thank you, Madam President.
Leader of Government Business. I see no light on, so I'm thinking we are going to pose the question. Senator Dr. Harrison, Honorable.
Can I get the question? Madam President, distinguished senators, I rise in support of the motion presented by Leader of Government Business. And I rise today to address the St. Lucian public, highlighting the continued honesty of this Labour government. This government's mantra has been putting people first. And although we are only 2 months post an election where the people spoke decisively, we are already seeing that this government continues to hold true and steadfast to its promise that was made to the St. Lucian people 4 years ago. The removal of the 10% VAT penalty, it could not come at a better time and in a better month. We got a VAT-free day as an early Christmas present, and now we are getting an early independence present. So I thank you, Prime Minister. We love our Prime Minister. We know that this current 10% penalty for late payment, we know it's intended to encourage timely compliance and to compensate the Treasury for delayed revenue. And we know that that objective is legitimate. However, This Labour government is trying to ease the squeeze on our St. Lucian people and on our business owners, particularly our small business owners. So this early independence present will allow our St. Lucian people, our business owners, to get their finances in order and also relieve them of that extra 10% surcharge which they may have had problems acquiring. This is the thoughtful, humane, and fiscally brilliant Prime Minister that we have. He is a man of his word, and he has proven this time and time again. Removing this 10% penalty can lead to improved short and medium-term revenue recovery because taxpayers are more likely to engage and settle their liabilities, and voluntary compliance becomes more effective. We know penalties can trigger avoidance and not compliance. We also have decreased administrative costs. When persons are faced with surcharges, they may have to liquidate assets at a loss to meet obligations. Preventing this distressed sales preserves their asset values, and it improves public trust. So we can see that this government cares about the people of St. Lucia. And as such, they have waived the VAT penalties for a period of time in order for the people of St. Lucia to get their finances in order, and like I said, to ease the squeeze on our people. Responding to Senator Norbert, he spoke about it being illegal to not pay our taxes, yet he states that the people are being penalized with a 10% penalty. This government is extending the amnesty. What could be bad about this, Madam President? Senator Fede spoke at length about VAT implementation. Yet he failed to speak on the promise which the United Workers' Party made, which was to remove VAT altogether during their 2016 to 2021 term.
That's right.
But Madam President, we have seen who tells the truth and who doesn't, and the people of this country saw it, and they made their bold statement only a couple months ago.
That's right.
And Madam President, this Labour government, despite taxes being in place, and VAT is one of them, it is needed by the government, this same government was able to increase pensions to more than double what it was, to have CXC being paid for our children. This Labour government was able to have a VAT-free day which benefited the people of St. Lucia greatly. They were able to create the youth economy. This government has invested more monies in the police force than any other government, and all being done while taxes are in place. Madam President, Senator Descas is trying to instill fear into the hearts of our people, stating that the government ran at the end to give things to our people nearing elections. But Madam President, the evidence is there. It was 4 years of working.
That's right.
4 years of helping the people of St. Lucia.
That's right.
And this is why we had a landslide victory in this country. So Madam President, Madam President, just before I take my seat, to not support this motion, in my opinion, is inhumane. I think.
Correct.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I wish to thank senators who made their contribution towards such an important resolution. As tiny as it may seem, Madam President, it is very profound. I wish to thank the senators on the government side who have all supported and provided invaluable contributions to the debate on this resolution to simply remove the penalties on the VAT that ought to be remitted to the government of St. Lucia. Madam President, I would like to respond to Senator Descott first, where he highlighted the various indicators of the health of an economy. And Madam President, I'm drawn back to my days when I did Economics 101, where I was taught that the health of an economy is characterized by its growth, yes, jobs, unemployment or employment, inflation and prices, consumer health, business health, financial stability, and so on. So, Madam President, the economy of St. Lucia, based on the indicators that we have realized over the past 4 to 5 years, have shown a projected positive growth. And so if you're looking at the health of the economy, then you would say, if you have to take, if a doctor has to examine the health of the St. Lucia economy, they would give St. Lucia a good, clean bill of health. Because we have had projected growth. We have had declining unemployment, the lowest we have seen in years. So if we are examining the health of our economy, St. Lucia Cafe Bier, we are healthy, we are doing well. Now, a healthy person does not mean that that person will not get the flu. One who is healthy does not mean that you're malbude. There are certain little things that will happen to us even though we are healthy. So it's not to say that for a healthy economy, there cannot be some contraction. My fellow Senator Descartes, as an economist, need to tell the people how to measure the health of the economy. Our economy over the last 4 to 5 years is on a growth trajectory. Now, Madam President, I want to refer to the very same Eastern Caribbean Central Bank that Senator Descartes referred to, and particularly reference the Annual Economic and Financial Review 2025 for St. Lucia. At page 3 of that report, Madam President, captioned Overview, I will read only 2 paragraphs, Madam President, but I can make the entire document a document of the House. Because, Madam President, when we come here, we have a responsibility to the Senate to provide factual information. The information which was presented, Madam President.
Senator Descartes.
Madam President, on a point of order.
What is your point of order?
Senator, Je is suggesting that I did not provide factual statement to the House. I have not misled the House at all.
No, she didn't. She said when we come to the House, we must provide factual statement to the Senate. She did not call
implying, because she's speaking about Senator Descartes on ECCB discussions around the contraction in the economy. So I think she's implying that I did not provide a factual statement. I can go on the website now, Madam President.
We will not have a back and forth. She said we must provide factual information, and she has quoted her page from where she will be. So I'm implying that she said we must, we, meaning everybody. Okay? Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I quote, Madam President, economic activity contracted by 0.5%, unlike 2% that we heard, in 2025, reflecting binding structural constraints rather than decreased demand. Capacity limitations, rising costs, and project execution delays weighed on tourism and related sectors, while revenue and financial indicators point to resilient domestic demand. The fiscal outturn for 2025 was characterized by improved revenue performance, which, despite rising spending pressures, supported a narrowing of the overall deficit to 2.0% of GDP, unquote. Madam President, I also want to reference the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Executive Board report, which concluded on January 12, 2026. It's on the International Monetary Fund website, imf.org. It says, St. Lucia has staged a robust performance in recent years. The economy is projected to grow by 1.7% in 2025, following a strong expansion of 4.7% in 2024. With weaker tourism but strong construction activities, domestic demand, and credit expansion. The economy is then expected to rebound in 2026 from tourism pickup. Madam President, I'm not reading that from a fairy tale. I am not reading this from Pawal Bolawi. These are from reputable financial agencies, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the IMF, Madam President. So when we sound in gloom and doom to the people of St. Lucia, our people must know that international and regional agencies are projecting brighter future for the healthy nation called St. Lucia. Madam President, we are here simply to approve a motion that will relieve businesses. So, Madam President, when I hear Senator Dominic Fede say that he cannot support a motion that will bring relief to businesses, I wonder what the Chamber of Commerce, the St. Lucia Small Business Association, the Manufacturing Association, what are these organizations saying? What do they feel? That the opposition does not support relief to their businesses? But what is ironic, I don't know, Madam President, if senators realize that. Senator Norbert says he supports the resolution, but Senator Fede does not support it. So what is the opposition's position? Because you would think that there would have been a united front. Now, I don't know where Senator Descartes lies. I think he's in between the two. support par support. Ça c'est café. La teni un jour yo teni fi couper par couper. Support par support. What is your position, opposition senate of the opposition senators? Madam President, I heard Senator Norbert say amnesty signals that a system has failed. We agree with that. There cannot be any dispute about that. But the question is, how do we correct it? And what is being done there now? Oh, you want the businesses punished, Madam President? That's what Senator Norbert is saying. Punish them? Do not allow them a relief so that they can bring in the taxes that are due to the government of St. Lucia. So where would we get the taxes from? I just cannot understand that philosophy. What should we do to rectify the failed system? Madam President, the United Workers' Party administration has always been saying that VAT is oppressive. Okay? Yet still, they came on a promise of reducing VAT with a view to complete elimination of VAT. Yet still, for 5 years that they spent in government, they removed 5 and going and counting. If we didn't check ourselves, it would have been forever and ever. But for all of that time that they remained in government, they never kept the promise of elimination of VAT. They removed the 2.5% that made a little dent. Nobody felt it in the supermarket. And now, you're coming back and crying to the people and saying that was oppressive. Y'all did not, the United Workers' Party administration did not live up to their promise. What we're seeing now, from 2021 up until now, St. Lucia Labour Party administration under Honorable Philip J. Pierre, he has delivered every single promise he made, plus change. He has delivered every promise, and he give us more on it. Because there's no VAT-free day in the 2021 manifesto, but we got VAT-free day. The pensioners have been given...
Senator Norbert?
I stand on a point of order.
What's your point of order?
The member is misleading the House. The Prime Minister did not deliver on every single promise in the manifesto. We cannot say that.
Senator
Madam President, I would like Senator Norbert to point out the items in the manifesto that were not delivered. And I want him to bring it to the Senate and show it to us. Because I can show you. I gave you the manifesto. I gave them the manifesto, Madam President. And I gave them the achievements document as well. I gave Senator Descott the manifesto and the achievements document. Because I believe in this term, Senator Descott might be moving around to the other side of the table, Madam President. I can feel it. I can feel it, Madam President. Madam President, in addition to the VAT-free day, Madam President, like Senator Honorable Dr. Harrison said, we did not give little things at the end of the period. For 4 continuous years,
4 years,
the St. Lucia Labour Party administration has been providing relief to the people of St. Lucia in every avenue. And that is why, Madam President, we got the results that we saw on December 1st, 2025.
Yes, 4 years.
People's minds were already made up long before the date was called.
Correct.
When they were shouting to ring the bell, people's bell had already rung in their head because they knew what would have happened.
Correct.
By a little fluke, they were able to get one seat. So, Madam President, the bottom line of this motion is providing relief to business people, putting businesses first.
Putting people first.
All in line with our mantra of putting people first. Madam President, the opposition senators need to be careful about how they oppose the matters that are coming before us. You're not opposing us here, just 5 of us. When you oppose initiatives that benefit the people, you're opposing them. They are listening to you.
Correct.
And Honorable and Senator Norbert, Madam President, is asking for sign language. Could you imagine if the deaf have to also hear, or the hearing impaired must also hear, that they do not support an amnesty to the business people of St. Lucia? You want more people to hear what you are saying that will be detrimental to them? Madam President, I wish to advise opposition senators to be careful what they're asking for. Just be careful. So, Madam President, I reiterate my support for this motion that will provide for the relief, the removal of the penalties on the VAT that is to be paid from 10% to 0%. Could you imagine getting a 10% relief of penalties? I remember once when I was still young and I did my income tax returns. You know, you do your returns, you may have made errors. I made errors on the returns, and I was owing Inland Revenue. But it was showing that they were owing me. So when they did the assessment, and they sent me that assessment years later, it had the VAT that I was owing, plus penalties and interest. The penalties and interest were more than the amount that I was owing. When I saw that, I immediately took that assessment and ran to the controller of Inland Revenue because my head was hot. So could you imagine having to pay interest and penalties on what businesses are owing? I can imagine how difficult it is for these businesses. But thanks to the government of St. Lucia, led by Honorable Philip J. Pierre, the businesses do not have to put in the penalties in this case, and they will be more inclined to pay the VAT that is due, and they will do so before May of 2026. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order, which alters from 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026 the rate of penalty from 10% to 0% on the whole or part of the remainder of tax due or payable under the Act for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is provided under Section 33(1) of the Value Added Tax, Chapter 15.42, the Act, that tax payable under the Act, which is not paid by the date on which it becomes due and payable, bears interest at the rate of 1.25% per month or part of a month for the period during which it remains unpaid. And whereas it is provided under Section 33(2) of the Act that the Minister responsible for finance may, subject to the affirmative resolution of the House of Assembly and by order, alter the rate of interest under the Act. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of interest order by an affirmative resolution of the House of Assembly to alter from the 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026 the rate of interest from 1.25% to 0% on tax payable which is not paid by the date on which it becomes due and payable for the period during which it remains unpaid for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Be it resolved that the House of Assembly, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of interest order, which alters from 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026 the rate of interest from 1.25% to 0% on tax payable which is not paid by the date on which it becomes due and payable for the period during which it remains unpaid for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Madam President. Again, Madam President, this motion, this resolution is similar to the previous one. The only difference is the rate of interest is 1.25%, while the rate of penalty that we just dealt with before was 10%. So the government of St. Lucia is seeking to remove or waive the 1.2% interest so that to encourage greater compliance and so that the businesses can remit the VAT. Thank you.
Senators, the question is that the House of Assembly, by affirmative resolution, approves the value-added tax alteration of rate of interest order, which alters from 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026 the rate of interest from 1.25% to 0% on tax payable, which is not paid by the date on which it becomes due and payable for the period during which it remains unpaid for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. Senator Fede.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to again comment on this motion as presented by the government. Madam President, there seems to be a lot of mixing up in where the opposition may stand on a number of these issues. I hope, Madam President, that there'll be no confusion after I submit our very clear and decisive opinion to the House. Madam President, for the sake of senators, I would like to ask if they have a copy of the IMF article for report 2024. And I'm going to reference page 8 and 9. If senators wish, they can follow me. Because when Senator Descott, Senator Norbert, and myself got up, we didn't just speak on our own accord. We consulted documents, and we consulted what reputable institutions like the IMF, the CDB, the World Bank has to say about tax amnesties, particularly in the case of St. Lucia. And it is unfortunate that our words may be twisted, but we're going to take the chance nonetheless. Madam President, I would like to make it absolutely clear.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order.
What is your point of order, Senator?
Madam President, the Senator Fede is suggesting that we are twisting information. Madam President, this sounds quite derogatory. I would like
Senator, he said his words may have been twisted.
Yes, but we have provided factual information, Madam President, which did not twist his words at all.
That was his opinion. His words may
have been
twisted. That's what he said.
Yeah, but we don't twist here.
Please proceed, Senator Fede.
Thank you, Madam President. And so in the abundance of caution, I have asked senators to consult the IMF. Madam President, here is what page 9 of the IMF says about tax amnesty.
You're reading from the report. What year? Is it 2024?
2024, Article 4, 2024. Section 15 of that report is very clear. It says, Madam President, improving tax administration is crucial to domestic revenue mobilization. We all agree. It says key issues include insufficient staffing in the IRD department, the department that is charged with the responsibility of collecting taxes. So we are here because of insufficient staffing issues. We are here, Madam President, with a pile of taxes that we can't collect because of a manual process. We're here, Madam President, according to the IMF, because of inadequate data quality and transparency, especially with the Customs Department. As we know, Madam President, the Customs Department is a big area where VAT is collected through our ports. So the IMF says that that needs to be improved. That is as recent as 2024. It says while progress has been made, auditing and inspection capabilities should be improved further to match regional standards. So there's a standard in the Caribbean that St. Lucia has fallen behind, that we're not there. We have to get up to that standard. Says the IMF report after meeting and consulting with Ministry of Finance staff and various officials in their consultation here in St. Lucia, which they do annually, Madam President. It also went on to say that we need to leverage the ongoing tax administration modernization project and analytics-driven compliance risk management. It goes on to say, Madam President, that improving taxpayer access and service mobilization, reducing the perception of impunity. There you go, interesting word. Reducing the perception of impunity, Madam President. This motion today goes in the face of what the IMF recommends and how they interpret a move like this and the knock-on effect and the lack of compliance that they believe that this would encourage. And that's what the opposition is trying to say. We're not against businesses. We want businesses to succeed. We are business people, some of us. Some of us are from the private sector. But what we are saying is that we are against failed St. Lucia Labour Party government strategies that clearly have not been working. That's what we're saying. So if you make people feel that they can not pay the taxes and you're going to waive it every time, then what do you say? I heard the member, well, I've heard it said time and time again that the United Workers' Party administration has given Sandoz $24 million. Right?
Senator,
I'm not referring to him at all.
But I would think you should refrain from calling out names of companies in here.
I'm not referring to Senator Jha.
Yes, but I'm saying he did not mention, but you shouldn't mention either. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. It has been said that the United Workers' Party administration has given away $24 million in taxes. Madam President, nothing is further from the truth. Because, Madam President, there was a tax dispute with a certain private sector concern in St. Lucia with the IRD department and that private sector concern over withholding taxes. And that dispute happened during the tenure of the St. Lucia Labour Party administration, which predated the UWP administration that I served in. And the issue there was, Madam President, the principle on that was 60 million. As the two sides were having a discussion as to what the outcome of that dispute will be, the interest and the penalties went up and took it up to the $24 million. Madam President, exactly what the St. Lucia Labour Party administration is doing for businesses here today is what the previous UWP administration did, Madam President, because there was an investment, Madam President, as it pertains to that specific company that was on the cards. So it's very hypocritical that when the Labour Party does it, it's okay. But if the UWP does it, it's a problem. Madam President, but I want to stick to the IMF. I want to stick to the IMF because they go on to say a lot of things here that will shock you, Madam President. Please fasten your seatbelt. Madam President, the IMF goes on to say that improving taxpayer access and service digitization, reducing the perception of impunity for tax avoidance and evasion, and fostering a strong culture of compliance. That's what we're saying on this side. That the government strategy must foster a culture of compliance. The IMF, though, and they didn't tell the people of St. Lucia, this is what they didn't tell the people of St. Lucia, that the IMF gave them one advice, and they're doing something else contrary to what the IMF has said to them. But they want to blame Tommy their scat. They want to say Tommy quote wrong figures. But here is the IMF telling them in very plain terms.
Senator, I think we should refer to Senator by his name. He's Senator Descott.
Senator Descott. You see, I'm too familiar with Senator Descott, but I do take your counsel, Madam President, despite our very close affinity and relationship, that we should be professional in the House. Senator Descott. You see, I'm not used to calling him that. But the IMF goes on to say, Madam President, that the ongoing tax amnesty program, now extended until May 2025, is estimated to result in foregone tax revenue of 4.6% of GDP. 4.6% of the GDP of the country. Last time I checked, Senator Descott, it was $6.9 million. $6.9 billion is the GDP. Now I want you to calculate what is 4 to 6% of that GDP. Let's use it as 5% of $6.9 billion of the GDP. That's what we're talking about here. This amnesty is costing the country this amount of money. And what we are doing here today, or what the Labour Party is proposing, is no man, we are doing it, it's okay. But yet they're saying they need money to buy, to do what? To give people contracts and to extend the services of the caregivers and all the wonderful things that they say that they would like to do through the SSDF, right? Whatever else you would like to do. But here we are, 4.6% of GDP, up to 6 times the taxes collected through the amnesty, right? But hear what it says, and it goes on. Here's the bombshell. The IMF says the amnesty should not be continued. The amnesty should not be continued, is what the IMF advised the St. Lucia Labour Party government back in 2024. But for some reason, Madam President, they're going against the advice of the professionals, and they are doing their own thing, and then they want to put us against the private sector. And that is the habit. I have never seen a government that does not take responsibility for its actions. This scapegoating of the opposition must stop, Madam President. And the government must have the courage to tell the people of St. Lucia that this is their own doing, that they believe this and this is their own thing. And they are going against the advice of the International Monetary Fund. That is what this says. The advice is, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't continue with these amnesties. So now you get up and they say to us, Madam President, because they won 16-1, because they won 16-1, they must violate the principles of economics and good governance. That is what they're telling us in the country here today. Yeah. We have won 16-1. We have beat some, I've heard some of them say in other forums, Madam President, we beat you, we beat you, we beat you. But, Madam President, whether we have defeated an election or not, Madam President, the backs of the United Workers' Party candidates are broad, and we are still standing strong. And it will take more than an election defeat, Madam President, to silence our voices on this side of the House. That is the difference. We will continue, Madam President, to stand up for the people's business and to make sure that it's done right. And that is the problem with the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. We will not be silenced. And so every time the opposition's voice rises, Madam President, rises, Madam President, right, in logic. Right, Madam President, what they do is that they throw offensive words across the chamber. and we take it, Madam President. We have
Senator, I think you need to pull this up. Sitting, presiding here, I don't think I accept offensive words being thrown across the chamber, so that would be putting me in a bad light. So, no, that has not been happening. You said what they do is to send offensive words across the chamber. That has not happened. That is not happening. Okay?
Madam President. So Madam President, here's the IMF saying that this is not a good thing. Government goes on and it does its own thing. The IMF, Madam President, lists a number of things, strategies that the government must implement and carry out so that they can have, Madam President, success in what they're doing. Sweeping reforms in the administration of tax is actually outlined in the IMF report, Madam President, dealing with the rationalization of corporate income tax revenue, Madam President, where the IMF says that 2 to 4% of GDP is actually being foregone by an inefficient tax strategy. It goes on to speak about reforming VAT, Madam President. States all of that. It goes on to mention improving the personal income tax. It goes on to, again, Madam President, say that developing property tax is one of those reforms. Reforming fuel taxes, Madam President, is also another one. And raising excise taxes on alcohol and tobacco, Madam President, are a long list of sweeping reforms that the IMF has actually recommended to the government of St. Lucia to do. What the IMF has advised against is exactly what they're doing here today. So, Madam President, I want to end by saying that this confusion that the SLP administration is trying to create about the opposition's view on this matter is very unfortunate. We are here, Madam President, not against the businesses. We are against failed St. Lucia Labour Party government policies that clearly isn't working. They have failed to still tell us in this reduction in the interest of VAT that they are proposing here today in this motion. They have failed to tell us how much is there. The IMF says 4 to 6% of GDP. That's a big number. So I thank you, Madam President, and I hope that our position has brought about more clarity, Madam President, on our stance on this rather important issue. I thank you.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I just want to provide some clarity to the debate, having heard from Senator Fede quoting from an IMF report of 2024. Madam President, I would like to quote from the same IMF report of 2025, Madam President, which is more current. And again, the same IMF Executive Board Article 4 consultation. It is on the IMF website, press release number 26/3, imf.org. If you go to the website, Madam President, where that same Article 4, which projects growth of 1.7% for St. Lucia in 2025, in the Executive Board's assessment, the IMF states, and I quote, reforming the tax system would boost revenue, improve equity, and reduce distortions. St. Lucia's tax system has high tax expenditures which weaken collection. Tax measures could include rationalizing corporate income tax incentives, broadening the VAT base, including digital services, accompanied with targeted support to vulnerable households, improving personal income tax progressivity, shortening property exemptions, reforming fuel taxes, and increasing excises on alcohol and tobacco. Tax administration priorities include strengthening audit and inspection, accelerating digitalization of processes, enhancing compliance, and improving transparency. Now, Madam President, the IMF does not give directives. They give advice. They make recommendations. This is not against the advice of the IMF. What the government of St. Lucia is doing, apparently, Madam President, Senator Fede reads with a selective memory. Because, Madam President, when it says reforming the tax system would boost revenue, okay, it speaks about providing incentives to the business sector for corporate taxes. Isn't that what we're here to do? Isn't the removal or the waiver of penalties and interest an incentive that would boost the collection of VAT? Madam President, perhaps I understand what the people of Ansbury did. I am now getting to understand. Madam President, exactly what is in the IMF report, the advice of the IMF report of 2025.
Madam President.
Senator Fede?
Yeah. Madam President, can I stand on the point of order?
Yes, what's your
Madam
point of order?
The senator is grossly misleading the House. I was very clear in quoting the IMF where its advice, right, is clear that the tax amnesty should not be concluded, be extended.
Senator,
she has not.
Senator,
yeah.
You were quoting from a report of 2024.
Yes.
Senator Jean quoted from some document 2025.
But
so clearly there cannot be an argument about this.
No. So, Madam President, 1 year before the IMF says this should not happen, the senator has not read anything in her report to suggest that they say the amnesty or the position they took the year before is that they have changed their minds about it. No, she has conveniently taken another section of some other thing to try to develop an argument.
Senators, come on now. Come on. 2024, 2025. Each person will present the argument as they see it fit according to what we. So I shall allow the senator to continue with her presentation.
Madam President, if there's one thing I know about the government of St. Lucia under the Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre is that he listens. He doesn't let animals bray. He listens. He listens. And so, Madam President, even after the advice, going through the advice of international organizations, and notwithstanding what Senator Fede is trying to present here, the country recorded 3 consecutive years of economic growth. In addition to that, Madam President, what we're doing here does not suggest that we did not collect VAT. VAT is being collected as we speak. It is just that the rate at which the collection, we're trying to stimulate it by extending the amnesty. But we're not gloom and doom. We are collecting the VAT.
Correct.
The VAT is coming in.
Correct.
But we are allowing businesses to thrive while they pay their VAT. We're not shutting them down, Madam President. We're not engaging in selective amnesty. And we're not going into explaining why, because there was a discrepancy and there was a this and a that. We are extending the amnesty to every business.
Not one.
Madam President, we don't have red business and yellow business. What we're doing here is for every single business in St. Lucia that has not met their VAT payments. That is what it is, Madam President. So, Madam President, I find for a simple thing like that, that would allow businesses to remit VAT while we remove penalties and interest, putting them first, putting the people who work for them first, putting their families first, so that we can continue to enjoy economic growth. We want to go back and look in 2024. Nous ha passé 2024. Nous ha fait ça 2025. Dis-nous.
You might have to say that in English.
We have to do. We are already, Madam President, ahead of 2025 recommendations. We're operating in forward.
Yes.
We are going backward, Madam President. We take off already. We there at our 35,000 altitude. We are running out of no fuel.
You're not kidding.
Nous pas qu'à courir. Madam President, we're heading in the right trajectory, Madam President. We have had perpetual economic growth. The people of St. Lucia, and that is the bottom line, you know, the people of St. Lucia are satisfied with the performance of the government. They have demonstrated their satisfaction, not once.
15.
You know, sometimes we thinking it's only December 1st that happened.
It's a fluke.
We must always remember that July 26, 2021 happened too. So, satisfaction, 15-2. Better satisfaction, 16-1. So, Madam President, I would advise the senators on the opposition side to really understand what the people of St. Lucia want. The people of St. Lucia want a government that cares, a government that shows, that demonstrates that they care, not a government that comes out and speaks. The people of St. Lucia do not believe the doom and gloom that is being projected on the opposition side. The government of St. Lucia knows that there is a government. The people of St. Lucia know that there is a government. When they say that they will do something, they do it. Not woulda, coulda, shoulda. We're seeing in every sphere of our lives in this country right now that whatever is promised by the government of St. Lucia is being delivered. And that will continue to happen for the next 5 years. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the House of Assembly, by affirmative resolution, approves the value-added tax alteration of rate of interest order, which alters from 2nd day of May 2024 to the 1st day of May 2026, the rate of interest from 1.25% to 0% on tax payable which is not paid by the date on which it becomes due and payable for the period during which it remains unpaid, for the tax periods before and ending on the 31st day of December 2023. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senator.
Madam President, I beg to suspend. I beg to move for the suspension of the sitting of the Senate until 2 p.m. What time is it? Yes, until 2:15.
Senators, the question is that the sitting of the Senate be suspended until 2 p.m. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended.
The Senate has now come to a suspension and will resume at 2:15. So the Senate stands suspended. In this morning's session, we just saw discussion of two of the resolutions relating to the alteration of the rate of penalty for VAT collections. And basically, the resolution 1, waivers the penalties that accrue from the non-payment of VAT by businesses. And of course, the second resolution is connected closely to the first resolution. So the first resolution removes the rate of penalty from 10% to 0%, meaning that businesses will no longer pay the penalties from non-payment of the VAT. And the second resolution removes the rate of interest from 1.25% to 0% on the tax which is on the tax payable which is not paid by the date which is supposed to be submitted to government. And of course there was broad discussion. Of course the government side making the point once again it is to assist businesses, to give them some space to put their financial house in order, if you will, and it allows for continued growth of the businesses. They also painted it, Mike, as giving the businesses some incentives. Okay, it is their way of incentivizing the businesses. Of course, the opposition gave some mixed interpretation, with some of the members on the opposite side supporting and some not supporting. Notably, Senator Norbert, he said he supported the government moves to give the businesses some fiscal space. And we saw Senator Despard and Senator Fede, who's replacing Senator Ferrer-Polius today, saying that in essence this is really an indication that the economy is not doing well. Again, Senator Fede, and we saw a lot of this argument, in the past session of Parliament when he was a sitting member of the Senate, stating that it is not to the benefit of the country that the government is constantly wavering on taxes, etc. Of course, the leader of government business, Ms. Alison Joe, she countered that it is something to watch the opposition actually speak against incentivizing the business sector. One last point I want to make on the government's contribution to this resolution is that I think in the end, the leader of government business kind of summed it up nicely, Micah, when she said that for the past 3 years there has been economic growth, and once again, yet again, even by the IMF, that St. Lucia's economy is projected to grow in 2026.
Merci un peu, Virgil. Moi, bien content de manière au bail en rapport à ce manière ça qui passe en Caïconsit, mais il est intéressant pour moi dire que ça le gouvernement a proposé en démotion, c'est pour bailler chez gens business anti-break. Que le gouvernement a demandé pour payer taxes avec quitter ça quitter ça passé avec, mais le gouvernement a demandé sous pour les gens business payer taxes avec garder qui ça arranger ça, particulièrement gens business. Eh bien, c'est comme ça nous venons au bout de session, première session aujourd'hui, ça c'est session avant déjeuner. Nous allons retourner à 2h, c'est 2h15, ok, 2h, et après 2h, pour nous continuer à plus à sa capacité en caille concite et puis session Sénat la journée. Nous allons retourner à après 2h.